All right, everybody, welcome to the playoff. I am Christian Gilman, also known as Gillmantech. I am the host of the show. I am joined by my co-host, Derek Kenny, and you have entered a show that is all about various sports, athletes, and events, and all kinds of things sports related from the standpoint of two very big sports enthusiasts. Derek, if you want to go ahead and say hi real quick to everybody.
Hello, people. This is my standard, wonderful introduction that has been pre-typed cast over the last 20 hours.
And it was worth every single minute. All right. Well, we're going to start off today. We are going to start off at the top of the hour with the NCAA brackets. We're going to go right into the turmoil that is this year's NCAA tournament, which
Oh,
has which has absolutely seen a destruction of both mine and Derek's entire fields, pretty much, with a few remainders left. But we're going to lead in here. We'll start out probably with our top four and who we had for picks and kind of the reasons why. I will go ahead and let Derek start off with his first top pick four and what he thought.
well, I'm very distraught just because it's half of my final four is already gone. My original final four was Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, and Michigan State. As we knew early into the bracket, Michigan State got upset by Middle Tennessee. So that's completely distraught, which, it makes me wonder if they were a little, not physically, but maybe a little mentally worn out after winning the Big Ten championship. I really don't know. Then there's North Carolina, or then there was Kentucky, which just got upset yesterday by Indiana. So that's gone. I still got Kansas and Duke, though. My original championship was Duke versus Kentucky, with Duke and Coach K getting his sixth national championship, which could still happen. Duke could still win it all. They're looking pretty good so far, but they haven't really faced anybody tough yet either.
Right. Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, never discount Coach K. I mean, he's obviously battle hardened and tested throughout the years, and I had him going to the Final Four as well, just because that was my main reason right there. I didn't know a lot about the Duke team this year, but you have Coach K, you always gotta kind of give them the advantage there.
Not to mention he has discovered the fountain of youth.
This is very true.
Seriously, look at Coach K. Don't look at his age. Just guess how old you think he is. I doubt any of you would say 69.
Yeah, no, he's definitely, especially in such a stressful sport when coaching and everything. It's pretty amazing to keep his looks like that. Like my guy, Tom Izzo, he's a great coach and all, but he's starting to weigh his age.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it happens. But I mean, I agree with part of your top four. I also had Kansas in there and Duke in there. Kansas has just been playing extremely well. They've been just dominating the field, especially as of late, and so I gave them that edge. But then I also had Michigan State. However, I did not have Kentucky. I had North Carolina. Michigan State, I'm going to go over them for a little second here. Yes, that upset was insane. That honestly, it made me cry as a big MSU fan. But I think you're kind of on the money there with the Big Ten championship. We were really hot going into the Big Ten championship. MSU was going along really well. We were beating people by double digits. It was steaming along, and then we got to that Big Ten championship, and we just started getting sluggish. And by the end of it, we were having to battle. The last two games, Maryland, Purdue, we were just having to just battle hard against those guys to get those wins, and I think we just lost that momentum, and we went into the tournament just totally tired and cold, and so I think it just showed.
You think part of it was also they underestimated Middle Tennessee?
It could very well possibly be that. Now, if the players did that, that's kind of an unusual thing for Izzo teams because he doesn't let his teams do that usually. But I mean, it's very interesting. I am curious to see how far Middle Tennessee will go now after this because that was a brawl, and it was I hadn't up until then Middle Tennessee I not even on my radar. Didn't even know who they were really.
The interesting thing about that also is you got, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting your the rest of your Final Four talk, but they got Syracuse up next, and even though they were a 10 seed, they're no slouch. They smashed Dayton. And after that, they got Gonzaga, which, again, not a high seed, but a great basketball tradition. So they're going to have to fight the gauntlet, and probably Virginia or Iowa State waiting for them at the end of that. So for them to get to the Final Four, they've got a real gauntlet to get through. So we'll see if they're legit or if they just got hot for one game.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, they did hit an absurd number percentage-wise of their threes that game. They were on the money with their shots that day. I actually had Dayton beating Syracuse. I actually, when I first picked that, I really weighed it heavily because Syracuse is Syracuse, and they're generally a pretty solid team.
Sure.
And I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not really honestly surprised that they're upset of Dayton. It's not that much of an upset, anyways. But
Right.
I just, for some reason, it felt that maybe this year they weren't quite there, and so I put Dayton ahead of them. But well, that shows what I know in that regard. So,
Interesting thing about that matchup, I had the exact same problem until I looked at Dayton's top 25 record this year. They're
mhm.
0-7 against the top 25 this year.
Oh, okay, that I didn't know. So
Yeah.
that's okay. That's definitely telling of something there. When the pressure's
Mhm.
on, they quite can't make it. Okay.
Or they
As
just beat up a lot of weaker teams and it looked better, you know?
Very true. Very true. Well, anyways, as far as the rest of my Final Four goes, I said I had North Carolina. I have North Carolina because the Tar Heels are the Achilles heel of Michigan State, and they're always up there in that clash. And I just had this feeling that if we had gotten up there, we were going to end up facing them again. And I was hoping we'd win, but every time we face them, they seem to have that little magical potion that just gets them right over us every time. And I hate playing them, to be honest of it all. But
They're,
um,
they're- mhm.
I did have us playing them and then beating them and going to the national championship against Kansas and having a nice rematch of earlier in the season. But obviously, all of that is shot to hell at this point.
Yeah, North Carolina is another one of those traditional powers, and a lot of people believe they are, if they can keep their heads on straight, they really are the best um, team in the tournament, top to bottom.
North Carolina, I definitely agree. They are a traditional powerhouse, and they have shown their stamina when it comes to NCAA tournaments. I mean, that's just who they are. You know, they could have a terrible regular season, tournament time comes around, and suddenly they could get really hot. So they have that kind of thing. But I think as far as the national championship goes at this point, I still have Kansas. I'm still saying they're going to go to the national championship. I think they'll get over Duke. They're just playing really hot, really well right now. They smashed Austin PA or whatever it is in the
Yeah,
first round, and then they beat Connecticut pretty well in the second. So I
and
still think they have
UConn,
it.
despite their seed, is no joke.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, UConn is not a joke. They're barely ever a joke. They're usually one of those top contenders as well. So
Mhm.
I still have Kansas going there. As far as the other side of the bracket, I think for the national championship at this point, I think it'd come down to Virginia and North Carolina, and I'm going to give North Carolina that edge still. I think they still have that ability to. So I think it'll be a Kansas North Carolina matchup at this point, as far as I'm concerned. And I still think Kansas will get the edge on that and become national championship or national champions. So I think
Yeah,
that's kind of my guess.
yeah, I mean, as far as it goes now, I think the final four will turn out to be Virginia, North Carolina, Kansas, and Duke. Uh, I agree for the most part. I just think it'll be, instead of Kansas, North Carolina, I just think it'll be Duke, North Carolina, and I think I'm going to go with North Carolina just because they're just on a roll right now,
Right.
taking that last spot.
Well,
Anyway,
that could be interesting. I mean, because Kansas, like I said, is on a roll as well. So I mean, if the two of them get
right.
rolling together, that could be quite a slugfest. But you
That,
said Duke instead, of course, so that gets Duke over Kansas first and foremost. So,
right, right.
um, but Coach K, as we said, don't count them out.
Hell no.
All right. So, well, as far as NCAA brackets go, that's about all I wanted to talk about there. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up concerning the bracket at this point?
No, I think. Well, actually, no. There is one thing that is kind of a bit in my craw. We've talked about this in the past, but never on the show. Obviously, never on the show. This is our debut episode. But I can't stand the insane outrage people get when certain teams don't make the bracket. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 64 teams that make 68 teams now that make the tournament.
Right.
If you don't make those top 68, I'm sorry. I'm not going to hold a funeral for you. I'm sorry you didn't make the tournament. You had ample opportunity. And if you didn't make it, there's no chance you were going to win anyways. And at the end of the day, that's what the tournament is. That's what a playoff is. It's not just the tournament. It's we want to find the best team in the country. And if you can't make it in that top 68, I'm sorry, you're not one of the best teams in the country. I don't want you in the tournament. Sorry.
No, yeah, and I agree with that completely. I mean, you had your shot. You have an entire season long. I mean, you have over 20 odd games. I mean, you have that chance to prove yourself and make your resume for your standpoint to get in. So, if you don't
Plus
at that
the
point,
conference tournament. Plus,
yep,
like even if you have like a terrible record, you can still win the conference tournament and get in there. So you always still have that back door, even if you have a terrible season.
right? No, exactly. I agree. But fans are as fans are. That's why they call them fans. They are fanatics, and they will always root for their team in the end. and try and make the case in point for him. Data can make many, many things seem possible.
Sure, sure.
All right. Well, if that's all for NCAA bracket, we're gonna move on, shift sports here. In fact, we're gonna go to a professional sport now. We're gonna go to the NFL, and we're gonna do some talking about the quarterback controversies that we have kind of roaming around the country right now. We're all over the place. So I want to probably start it out with, and this is all going to kind of feed into each other, but I'm going to start out with the Redskins right now. RG3 is gone. He's going somewhere else. Where he goes, I don't know. Maybe you have some ideas on that. Cousins actually has the franchise tag now, which is, to me, before we get into it too much, is kind of surprising. Obviously Cousins, my guy. He's from MSU. I like him a lot. He's been a nice guy. He's a good leader, I think. But when he was at MSU, he was always a good quarterback, never great. He was always a very solid, steady quarterback, but I never found him to be great. As opposed to, my biased opinion now with Cook right now, I think Cook is a good quarterback with flashes of greatness. I think he's a little bit better up than Cousins was. But Cousins has the franchise tag now. He had actually a decent season this year. He went to the playoffs. The last couple seasons, not very good. But now that he's actually gotten that starting mantle and gone along, maybe he has a future. Maybe he'll actually turn things and become even a better quarterback. I don't know. I would like to get some thoughts from you on that and the whole RG3 situation.
Well, I'm going to start with let's get Cousins out of the way, right? First and foremost, the franchise tag actually doesn't surprise me at all, because usually when a quarterback comes to the end of his contract and he finishes strong, he wants a big money contract. That's not uncommon at all, actually. The problem with there's a couple problems. The first problem is the quarterback is everybody wants the guy. They want their quarterback who is their guy, not just for this year, not just for next year, but for future years. And Cousins is in a kind of weird spot because you did mention, he had a great season last year. I'm looking at his stats right now: 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Not the greatest win-loss, but they need work on their defense anyways. They were 9-7. But still insanely better than he has done in previous years. His first 3 seasons, in fact, he had more interceptions than touchdowns. This year, not only did he have more touchdowns than interceptions, he almost had 3 times as many. So he had a great season. Now, the problem in the NFL and the problem with a quarterback is, like you see with a lot of quarterbacks, they'll have like one great year and then a team doubles down and they invest in them and they turn out to be nothing. This happened with Seattle Seahawks and Matt Flynn a couple years ago. He had a great flashes of brilliance. They invested a lot of money and they ended up going with Russell Wilson. And I don't even know where. I think Matt Flynn's back in Green Bay, actually. So I think what the Redskins are doing, and usually when it comes to decision making, I think the Redskins do terrible decisions. I think this is actually pretty smart. Put the franchise tag on them this year while they're still negotiating. It's not like they just put the franchise and they're not talking anymore. They're still negotiating. And I imagine Kirk Cousins is going to want something around $14 to $16 million a year. In which, if that's based on last season, he's more than worth it. But what the Redskins are kind of saying here is they're saying, we're going to put the franchise tag on you, and we're going to see if you can replicate that season or replicate something similar to that season. And if you can, we're going to sign you to probably a 6-year, $16 million contract. So basically what they're saying is, we want to believe in you. Show us that we can believe in you.
Right. Okay. So he's kind of in the hot seat at this point, and it's going to kind of determine, his next season. We'll see how far he goes, which that makes sense. It was kind of curious to me, but I think the coaches, the coaching staff, they like him. He's kind of their fit. He's the kind of guy they want. And do you think though? I mean, a lot of people argue that it was Shanahan was the coach when RG3 first came in, correct?
Yeah. Shanahan was there before RG3, actually.
Okay, well, yeah, and so a lot of people argue that RG3 didn't get a fair break and that he was ruined by Shanahan, or and then there's the other camp that say RG3 did it to himself. I'm kind of more in that camp, I would probably say, or maybe a mixture of both. But he came in, had that great year, and then I think he got injured, and then he just kind of came back and was nah. I mean, what are your thoughts on the RG3 situation?
Well, let's get the Shanahan thing right out of the way right away here. I like Mike Shanahan. Is he the greatest coach ever? No, but in no way did he ruin RG3's opportunities, mainly because he had already been with the Redskins a few years, and he knew if RG3 didn't succeed, he was out the door, and that was basically what happened. He put all of his eggs in this RG3 basket. The one thing I would argue that he should not have done, and he did do, but again, it wasn't because he didn't believe in RG3, he believed in him, is he had him run as much as he did. RG3 had issues of injury in college and in the NFL, you're much more likely to get hurt than you are in college. So having him run as much as he did, especially those first 2 seasons, even though he has those great legs, I think it's a bad option, especially when you got a moose like Alfred Morris. Hand the ball off to Alfred Morris a little bit more, punt a little bit more, relying on your defense and try to win that way. And what happened to RG3, even in that rookie year when he had what was it? He had 20 passing touchdowns and 7 rushing touchdowns and only 5 interceptions, but he got hurt the 16th game of the season, and he didn't play anymore. And then the next year he was jacked up, didn't play the preseason, only played 13 games, and he wasn't as fast, he wasn't as effective. And RG3 always had a good arm and he had decent legs, but when you cut off one of those options, you're more limited. And another thing, I know I'm going long on RG3 here, but the thing is about RG3 from the day he got in, and I don't want to knock the guy, but he always seemed to be far more focused on his branding than he did on football. And that's usually a death knell. You need to be the best guys in the game. Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, Luck. You don't see a lot of those guys on commercials or TV or things like that. You could argue Peyton, but Peyton's kind of he just retired. He was kind of at the end of his career these last few seasons, and he was still insanely focused on football. As a guy who's early in this league, I don't think I should see win 12 commercials, every NFL game.
No, and I completely agree with that. Honestly, we can kind of use that as a segue into the Manziel situation because I would say he's doing the same thing early in his career. But before we do that, I want to actually where do you see RG3 going at this point? Do you see someone picking him up, or do you see him just having to kind of be out?
He's going to get a job somewhere. There's actually talk about him visiting the 49ers, him hooking up with Chip Kelly over there. That would be interesting. There's talk about Dallas because that's back nearby Baylor, and Jerry Jones loves to make a splash, although then the question becomes, how much pressure are you putting on Tony Romo there? I don't know where he's going to go. I would, before the Texans picked up Brock Osweiler, I would have actually put a lot of money on him going to the Texans because the Texans have a really good team around them. They just don't have a quarterback. And then it becomes a question if Brock Osweiler's the man. I don't know where he's going. He'll get a job somewhere. Maybe as a backup, but he'll get a job somewhere.
Okay. All right. Well, it makes sense. And there's, we'll get into more later on. I might go into the Peyton and the Collar Kaepernick thing, and that kind of feeds into RG3 possibly going to the 49ers. But I guess let's backtrack here a little bit. I talked about Manziel for a second there. So I think he's suffering from the same thing you were talking about. Manziel, his rookie year, he comes out, he's got like Subway commercials. He's got tons of these different commercials. He's Johnny Football, and he's got all these different things going on, and then you get these articles of him partying and doing these other things. I think he's definitely taken to the hype part of things more rather than the actual job. And well, he's gone. He's going to be gone now. They're kicking him out, and looking back, they're probably pissed that they got rid of Brian Hoyer at this point, who's now at the Texans. But I'd like to kind of get your take on that because he was the next great thing, but it's Cleveland, and they tend to use quarterbacks quicker than toilet paper. So.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I can't put this all on Johnny Manziel. I'm going to put a lot of it on him because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own decisions. But let's start with the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are a dysfunctional organization. I think that's very clear. Especially, when it's Brandon Weeden, it's Colt McCoy, whatever. They always get the flashy new quarterback, and they do it every few years. I also believe, I'm not 100% positive, but I do believe they've changed 4 of their head coaches in the last 5 years. That's not a sign of stability. That's not a sign of function. That's a sign of, it's not working, we have to change it now. That's not how it works in football, especially at the level of the NFL. You need stability. Look at the best teams in the league. Even though they at times have bad seasons or bad years, they stick and they stay the course, and ultimately they have long-term success. The Patriots, Ravens, Steelers, Broncos, Packers, Saints, 49ers. Well, not the 40. I'm sorry, Seahawks though, definitely. You stay the course and you have more long-term success. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that the teams I just mentioned, you have pretty much the large percentage of the Super Bowls just between the Steelers and the 49ers themselves. Long term, they have a large portion of those Super Bowls. Brady himself has, 4, just being with Bill Belichick and that sense of stability. That's what you need in the NFL. That's why the teams that usually fail are teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Cleveland Browns, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I hate to say this, the Detroit Lions. I think they're getting better at it, but at the end of the day, it's that lack of stability that causes so many problems. Now, actually, I know I have to share this one story. I'm sure everybody has heard it, but it kind of drives my point home. The Cleveland Browns spent $500,000 on this special test to find the perfect quarterback to take in that year's draft. And their test showed Teddy Bridgewater as the best quarterback to take. Not only did they not take him with the number 8 pick they had that season, they took a cornerback, I can't even remember who it was, but with the 22nd pick, they took Johnny Manziel. And while Teddy Bridgewater was still on the board, and Vikings picked him up, and that turned out to be probably the best pick of that year's draft because Bridgewater turned out to be somewhat of a success, while Manziel and Bortles definitely did not. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going long on this, but back to Manziel. Johnny Manziel, as you mentioned, does gets drafted, throws up his money signs, gets drunk, parties, and the reason why he did all this is because he could do all these things and succeed at the college level. The problem is he got away with a lot of the things he did on the college level by being able to use his legs, which is he's fast on the college level. On the NFL, not so much. He's faster than average, but he's definitely not an RG3 or a Michael Vick or even a Russell Wilson. And another problem is with Johnny Manziel, just on a physical standpoint, he's not as tall as other quarterbacks. So when he goes behind, when he's under center and he has to make a 3-step drop, he has trouble seeing over the line of scrimmage, which means he has to move outside the pocket. Similar to Russell Wilson. The difference is Russell Wilson understands when it's 2nd and 9 and he's outside the pocket and guys are coming at him, that the smart decision is to throw an interception, to throw it out, throw an incompletion.
Yeah, so if the smart decision was to throw an interception, I think he'd be off that team pretty quick.
Throw an incompletion. Manziel gets outside the pocket and decides, I'm going to run for 20 yards, and he gets sacked for -3. He's never had the greatest decision making. And we started stories of him not reading his playbook, not knowing the plays, and just not focusing on football is the biggest reason for his downfall.
Right. Now, do you think someone else will give him a shot at this point? Or do you think he's kind of screwed himself out of the league at this point? I mean, what do you think his future holds?
Nobody's going to touch him this season. That
so?
Doesn't mean this season nobody's touching him, and that's got a lot to do with his rehab and his drinking problems and his issues there.
Well, then maybe it's possible you see this sometimes with other professional players. Do you think he makes the transition to the CFL, the Canadian Football League, tries to regain some stature there and then come back, or
no? I don't know if everybody knows this, but Johnny Manziel comes from a very, very wealthy family. So it's going to he's very tight with them, and they're trying to take care of him. It's going to be one of two things. A, he gets his stuff together. And quite honestly, I don't like the kid, but I hope he gets his crap together because I think everybody deserves to have a stable life. He gets his crap together. He tries to go back to the NFL. Somebody picks him up as a backup because there were flashes of brilliance. He does have a good arm. He really does. It's not like he's got a weak arm. His decision-making is bad, and he's not as fast as he thinks he is. But if the right coach can get a hold of him and be like, all right, this is what you're good at, this is what you need to stick to, I think he won't be a franchise quarterback, but he could have some success in the NFL as a starter somewhere or as a backup. So that's either A or B. He's going to go back home and he's going to, figure something else out with his life. He's not going to go to the CFL or any other form of a smaller organization. He's going to be like Tebow. He might even get a broadcasting deal if he gets his crap together. He's very likable. He's very popular, but quite frankly, I don't think the kid is the type to put his nose to the grindstone and really work his way back into prominence.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, do you think, all right, so if he does make it back to the NFL, say he goes to option one, he makes it back in, someone picks him up, you think it'll probably take someone to maybe calm him down a little bit, turn him more of into a pocket passer rather than any leg kind of movement, only using those legs as kind of an escape option when necessary, but really just kind of keep him in the pocket behind a maybe strong offensive line and then just use his arm at that point. You know, if someone needs to use him in that fashion, probably.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's his best option as success. If you move him out, I'm not saying never move him out of the pocket. What I'm saying is when you move him out of the pocket, it's not to run downfield, it's to get more vision,
Right.
to see further down the field. And he needs to understand. And I keep bringing up Russell Wilson, but it's because he's the best at the game at this. Understanding when it's better to throw it away than try to force it in there. So many quarterbacks, even at the NFL level, try to force it in there, and they can get away with it because they're Andrew Luck or they're Aaron Rodgers, or they just have that arm. And more times than not, they can get away with it. While Manziel has a good arm, his arm is not elite, and he can't make those kinds of throws where you throw it in a tiny little window, and maybe your receiver gets it, maybe it gets picked off.
Right.
He needs to understand. Russell Wilson, I keep bringing up Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson's like that too. He has a good arm, not a great arm. When Johnny understands when it's 2nd and 8 and you're running outside the pocket and you're probably going to get hit, you need to throw it away because you still have a 3rd down. Or even if it's 3rd down and you throw it away and you're going to have to punt, it's still better than an interception. It's still better than a sack.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No. So he's got to improve his football IQ, is what you're basically saying.
Right, and he's not going to get that done, going out and partying.
Yeah, he needs to go read the Peyton playbook and get some IQ up there. Well, anyways, let's get off Peyton a little bit, but I want to stick with the Browns for a moment. They got rid of Hoyer last year, and I know you thought that was a bad idea, and I agreed.
Yes.
So this year now, who do they look for quarterback? Do they try and draft one? Do they bring someone in from the league already? I mean, what's the option?
That would definitely be their MO. Let's draft a quarterback at the end of the first round. That would definitely be their MO. They still got Josh McCown, but to be quite honest, he is not a franchise quarterback. But the Browns are picking number 2 overall, and they could get Jared Goff or what am I hearing? Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. They could either get Jared Goff or Chris Wentz, which are the 2 quarterbacks everybody's talking about right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, all right. I mean, it's kind of up in the air right now. No, that's fine. So we'll kind of put a pin in that one. We'll kind of see how that plays out maybe when the draft comes up.
Sure.
We'll move on to some further quarterback controversy within the NFL now. Peyton's retired. Mr. Peyton has finally hung up his laces and decided to call it quits for his life and move on to other pursuits. He ended on a Super Bowl win, so good for him. But now we have the issue of the Broncos. Who are they going to use to replace him? There's been talk of Colin Kaepernick coming over, but I mean, there's shuffling of quarterbacks going on everywhere. And you mentioned RG3 possibly going to the 49ers. Maybe that happens if Colin Kaepernick comes to the Broncos. So, I mean, what do you see? What do you think they need? Who do you think they're looking at most? And what do you think the best scenario for them is?
Well, people are going to laugh at me when I say this, but they picked up they picked up Mark Sanchez, and granted he's had mixed results at the NFL, but that's also because, quite frankly, he's been put in bad positions to succeed. When he had the most success in the NFL was his 2 rookie seasons on the Jets. And what did the Jets have? The Jets had a great defense and a good running game. What do the Broncos have? They have a phenomenal defense and a very good running game.
Mm-hmm.
It would not surprise me at all if they decide that Mark Sanchez is their guy, at least for this season, unless they want to sacrifice some draft picks and go up and get a guy in Jared Goff or Chris Wentz, or maybe even Paxton Lynch from Memphis, who I hear a lot of people talking about. But again, the Broncos are a very smart team, and they have very smart front office with John Elway and all those people. And I doubt they're going to take that kind of a risk on somebody they're not 100% upon. If they take Jared Goff, Chris Wentz, or Paxton, or Connor Cook, or any of those guys, or Dak Prescott, it's going to be because they believe 100% in this guy, and this is their future.
Okay. All right, because I was going to say, what position do they draft at? What is their order?
Well, they won the Super Bowl. They draft last.
Oh,
They
that's
draft
right.
very.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they draft last. That totally phased my mind for a second there. I'm sorry
No,
about
that's
that.
why
But
I had to think about it for a minute. I was like, where do they? Oh, yeah, they won the Super Bowl.
yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, there is. I mean, I don't know. This is all speculation, but I have heard they have been talking to Cook quite a bit, and he is kind of projected as a late first round, maybe early second
Yes.
round. So it is a very possible situation. They
Oh,
could bring
yeah.
him in. And you were mentioning Mark Sanchez, and I don't know. Do you think it's possible they could play Mark Sanchez for a year, make Connor the backup to him, have him learn the system, and then bring him out, or do you think they wouldn't do that if they brought him in the first round?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, that's the smart way to do it. I mean, a lot of guys bring in quarterbacks and they throw them right in the fire, and sometimes it works out, and a lot of times it doesn't. What I have noticed in the NFL, guys who have long-term success in the NFL, usually, not always. I mean, there's your occasional Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning where you throw them right in there, and they're throwing darts right away. But usually, it takes a year or two to figure the NFL out. And if you do that from the bench, yeah, they're probably not going to be happy. They're probably going to be pissed, but it will make them a much better quarterback in the long run. And they're not going to be hearing, excuse me, they're not going to be hearing footsteps every time they take a 5-step drop and try to make a throw. They're not going to be gun shy and trying to get rid of the ball.
Right.
They have learned the system. They understand the system. They understand the NFL. They understand how things work. And they're also probably because they realize that I think that's another problem with rookie quarterbacks who are thrown right into the fire is they believe they're the guy and there'll never be somebody in front of them. I think playing backup gives them a year to realize, okay, I can be replaced at any moment. So when I get there, I need to understand this playbook. I need to understand the defense. I need to understand all these things so that when I'm in that spot, I never, ever give it up and nobody else can take it away from me. Probably the best example of that, Tom Brady.
Right.
Tom Brady sat behind Drew Bledsoe for a year and a half, and Bledsoe got hurt, and Brady knew I had this very tiny window to make the most of my opportunity, and the rest. He wins the Super Bowl that year, and the rest is history.
Yeah, he went on to be an okay quarterback, I'd say.
He was all right. He was okay. He had his moments. If they wouldn't, I mean, Connor. I've told you, I think as far as physical goes, Connor Cook has all the tools. And some things guys are slamming him on I don't think is quite fair. His completion percentage, a lot of people talk about, is low for a quarterback drafted that high. But the fact of the matter is, no offense to MSU, but they're a run-first offense.
Oh, very much so.
When you have Connor throw, he's usually not making the safe throws. He has to make them riskier throws. So of course you're going to have a lower completion percentage. I
agree completely. I mean, even this year, MSU is a run-first offense. When we had a year when we had 3 new running backs, and sometimes 4, in fact, changing out position throughout the entire course of the year, trying to get playing time. And we still tried to ram that down the field. And so, I mean, he's definitely had to make a lot of tight window passes, and so I think that affects it for sure. But I mean, in my opinion, I think the best thing for him, and I would hope it would happen, honestly, would be for him to go to the Broncos and have that situation play out where he gets a year behind someone else to learn. I would hate to see him to honestly go earlier in the draft to like someone like the Cleveland Browns, where he might get just run over and his career could be screwed at the very beginning. So
his chances, well, at least going in the first round, his chances going to the Browns are very, very small because everybody's focusing on these 3 other guys. My one, and again, I got to be objective. Well, I was being objective giving Connor Cook props there. I don't really like Connor Cook very much, but to play the other side of it, the big question about Connor Cook is his decision making. And I'm not. No, you don't got to worry about Johnny Manziel stuff. He's not going to do anything stupid like that. But there are times where you see him, and again, I just defended him for making bad throws. But there are times where you see him try. He tries to force it in there too much, and honestly. I like that in a quarterback. I want a quarterback at times when if he's got the arm, take the risk.
Right.
The other thing is I don't understand why he didn't. He had a great opportunity to go to the Senior Bowl and really show everybody up. Now he says it was a shoulder injury, and I hope that's true. But the director in Mobile, Alabama, Phil Savage, said that the injury, it wasn't injury related. Now, maybe Cook talked to him on the phone and just said, hey, it's personal, and he meant his injury. I don't know, but that's just kind of weird question mark. I hope that's just miscommunication on somebody's part.
Right, and I don't know the exact circumstances behind that. I think it was also partially probably because he was training with the quarterback guru he's been training with. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but point being is, so he did think it was him and his trainer and the other people around him thought that it'd be better for him not to go. So I don't know if that was the actual issue, whether it was the shoulder, what was the training, whatever it was. I don't know if a lot of the NFL teams are taking that into account or not. I haven't heard a lot about that, but it'll be interesting to see.
No, nobody's going to not draft Connor Cook because he didn't play in the Senior Bowl. It's a red flag. And, when you get enough consecutive red flags, and again, like I said, Cook's, for the most part, got his head on straight. He's not doing stupid stuff. So I think he'll be fine. Yeah. He just might drop to the second round, or some people say as late as the third round. And if he drops to the third round, it's not because he's not a first or second round quarterback. It's because a lot of people will have fulfilled those needs, and they might be looking at him as a backup and the quarterback of the future.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously I have a little bit of bias, but I do think if he were to drop to the third round, someone would be getting a pretty good steal on that.
Sure.
But like I said, compared to Cousins is actually finding success now, and I bring it back to that because Cousins at MSU to me was a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. Whereas I found Cook to be good as well, but with flashes of greatness. And so I feel like if he can actually get in a good situation for himself into the coming NFL seasons, he can, actually shine. He's not going to probably become another Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or anything like that, but I think he'd become a solid quarterback.
Could be a good, maybe even franchise quarterback. It's the NFL. And I'm not just saying this to slam Connor Cook. I'm saying this for any quarterback. You just never know. There are some guys who come into the league and they have all this pomp and circumstance, and they turn out to be nothing. For every Peyton Manning, there's two Jamarcus Russells,
right?
Or there's a Ryan Leaf, or there's whoever, these guys who had these amazing college careers, and they turn out to be nothing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can always bring it back to the cliche story of what Tom Brady drafted in the 7th round becomes one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So
exactly, you never know. You never know.